Hello and welcome to the Book Club Review. I'm Kate and this is the podcast about book clubs and the books that get people talking. The nights are drawing in here in the UK, there's a nip in the air, suddenly a pumpkin spice latte actually starts to sound appealing, and while it might be too soon for a hot water bottle, we're enjoying cozying up with some autumn reads. Laura dialed in from Vancouver to catch up with me on the books we've been reading before we get down to the more serious business of the Booker Prize shortlist. But for now, we've got Romance in the Lake District from reliable crowd pleaser David Nicholls. You Are Here was an instant Sunday Times bestseller, but did it make Laura want to lace up her walking boots? Or did she prefer US bestseller The Wedding People by Alison Espach? Described as an irresistible novel about love, friendship, dysfunctional families, and the unexpected paths that lead to happiness. I'm reporting in on A Waiter in Paris by new-to-me author Edward Chisholm, a delightful discovery after a recent weekend there. I'm also considering the worrying relevance of Ray Bradbury's novel of a post-literate future, Farenheit 451, after a recent reread. All this and more coming up here on the Book Club Review. To the gentle sound of foxes screaming in my garden, we sit down to record.
For non-English listeners, the sound of foxes screaming is one of the most horrifying, like viscerally horrifying noises you can possibly hear. If you wake up in the night really to them, you're like, our baby's being tortured. Like, what is happening outside?
Yeah. If you're not used to them, that is the first thing it sounds like a child being murdered. I grew up in the countryside, never heard a fox in my life. Hardly ever even saw a fox, obviously, because in the countryside they're like,
they're off doing their thing.
Yeah, exactly. And now I live in central London and I just the house is completely surrounded by foxes and I'm pretty sure they're moving in.
I did see multiple foxes when I stayed at your house a year or two ago.
Oh yeah, they're very at home in our garden. So I may have gone in slightly early. The clocks haven't quite gone back yet after all, but I have done a nighttime hot water bottle. I've crossed that Rubicon. All I find I want to eat in the morning is porridge and all this, and I wouldn't even say that autumn's really got going yet in terms of the leaves falling from the trees. It still feels like late summer, but for some reason I'm ready. I love autumn. It's my favourite season. I'm ready for it. How about you?
Oh, I'm totally ready for it too. And we had pretty good weather in Vancouver up until about a week or so ago. And now it's still warm, but it's darker, rainier. We were talking about it in my office this morning. We're all breaking out our sweaters, but then with tank tops underneath in case we need to transform throughout the day.
I love this transitional dressing as well. Layering. It's also great. It's cardigan season. It's also, more to the point, Booker season. So we're both going to be a bit tied up, aren't we, with reading for the Booker show, which is coming up. And so I feel like this episode is kind of about the last gasp of books that we read under our own free will for fun before we get into all that homework. Before we get to our recent reads, let me just take a moment to tell you about my favourite serious readers' lamps. Over the winter in the Northern Hemisphere, we're all going to be reading a lot by artificial light. But have you noticed how much harder your eyes need to work? Having to stop reading due to eye strain can be incredibly frustrating, but serious readers believe the problem is often down to the poor quality of most artificial light. They've developed lamps that are precision reading tools designed to bring the full, clear spectrum of natural daylight indoors. Like everyone else I know who has one, I could not imagine being without my serious reader's lights. I have one for my desk and one beside my bed, and I'm aware of how much easier it is to read without my eyes getting tired, and I also love the way I feel they help me maintain steady focus. On the technical side, they use their trademark daylight wavelength technology to replicate the full clear spectrum of daylight. This makes words on the page appear sharper and with better contrast, reducing the feeling of strain. And they're recommended by over 500 opticians for that reason. Precision reading lamps are an investment, it's true, but Book Club Review listeners can get the brilliant special offer of £150 off any HD Essential reading light, plus free UK delivery. Go to seriousreaders.com/BCR and use the code BCR at checkout. That's Bravo Charlie Romeo. It's completely risk-free with a 30-day home trial. If you don't feel the difference, they'll collect it for free and fully refund you. So head to seriousreaders.com/BCR and use that code BCR at checkout for £150 off any HD Essential reading light. Right, now that we're all kitted out for autumnal reading, let's get on with the show. Do you want to kick us off? What's on your stack?
I have actually done a lot of relatively light reading since I returned from the UK, and partially because I picked up at WH Smith in the Heathrow Airport coming back to the UK, one of their, I don't think it was 2 for 1, buy one, get one 50% off deals, one of those, I think. So the first one I read was You Are Here by David Nicholls, the best-selling author of One Day, which many people now know, if they didn't already, from the Netflix series. Did you watch that?
I didn't. And there's a film as well. And I feel like
that's true.
What people were saying was that the Netflix series was a better adaptation.
Yeah.
Maybe a more successful adaptation.
Yeah.
I think in that way that I really loved the book, and I have a very strong memory of how much I enjoyed reading the book when I read it years and years and years ago. I didn't want to overlay that with someone else's idea of the characters.
Well, One Day and I have a mixed relationship, of course, because without a spoiler, maybe it is always going to be a bit of a spoiler, but just the ending didn't work for me. So I actually watched half of the One Day series on Netflix and I was like, no, I'm not going to keep going. I just want to stay in the early days of this romance.
We've talked about this before, I think, but I'm such an idiot. I didn't actually realise the idea that it was all taking place on the same day in different time periods.
That's very funny. How did you not realize that?
Well, I understood they were flipping back and forth in time. Like, I totally got that. I just hadn't realised it was the same day. I don't know. I was just really interested in the characters and I cared about the stories and I hadn't quite noticed the date.
Well, before I get on to You Are Here, I did just want to flag, because it's a nice companion piece. The books actually have surprising parallels that I wasn't conscious of when I picked them both up. The other book I got at a discount from WH Smith was The Wedding People by Alison Espach. Now, this was one of your favorite books of the year last year.
I enjoyed this. I wouldn't say favorite book of the year, but I remember
not favorite, but I feel like it was in your favorite list.
I feel like I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it, is maybe what I'd say about The Wedding People. I thought it was quite gimmicky, and I was surprised at the degree to which, in the end, I went with it. I put my critical self aside and I just kind of rolled with it. But let's hear about You Are Here, and then we'll come on to The Wedding People.
Okay. Well, You Are Here is a bestseller in the UK right now. I would be interested if it has breakout bestselling status in the US, because it is all about two single, disgruntled, unhappy individuals hiking across the top of the UK in this very well-known trek that many people do in the UK. Incidentally, I have not, although I am interested, which is called the Coast to Coast. It's a long distance footpath and it goes from the west to the east coast of northern England. And it's about 300 kilometers long. So people usually do it over 10 to 14 days. And our two main characters are Michael. He's recently separated from his wife. He's very unhappy about this. And he has a little bit of trauma that has not precipitated his separation, but perhaps aggravated it. And we'll find out more about that as the story goes on. And then there's Marnie. Marnie lives in London. Michael does not. Michael lives in northern England. And the two of them are brought together on this hike by a mutual friend who thinks that they need to get out and meet other people. Famously, not great weather in the north of England. But nonetheless, these two carry on and the story continues as this friendship and emerging romance occurs. It's very English in its detail, and also I think in its observation and kind of like miserableness. The description of some of the pubs is great. The description of some of the bougie hotels versus the terrible hotels. There's an appalling scene towards the end, which has really stuck with me, where Michael ends up in an Airbnb in a room of this elderly man that he's just trying it out, and he is served a chicken that has been microwaved, a whole roast chicken that has been microwaved. Anyway, it's very, very English. I enjoyed it. I read almost all of it on the flight back from Heathrow. And at the same time, I wouldn't say go and read it. But maybe as a great comparison of national identity and culture, you then have The Wedding People, which I realize belatedly as I'm talking about it with you, also features a very unhappy woman in her late 30s, early 40s, same time of life. Over a period of depression and through COVID, she separated from her husband. He had an affair with a mutual friend. And this comes out quite quickly in the story. And equally, quite quickly, we learn that she has left their home where they're both professors in the Midwest. And she has traveled to the coast, the eastern seaboard, to a very fancy hotel that she once hoped they would both go to. And her plan is to end her own life. She's going to take her cat's medication and she doesn't want to live anymore. So it is funny because you do sort of think when you pick up this book that it's going to be quite light. And actually, the first third or so is, I think, a very well done portrait of someone who's really struggled with depression and now is very much struggling with the loneliness and having been left by her husband, and quite consciously and rationally is thinking that she doesn't want to live anymore. Now, into this state of mind comes this very entitled, I wouldn't say charming is quite right, although she grows on you, bride. Because what our heroine doesn't know is that she is the only guest at this hotel who is not attending this Uber wedding. You know, this $1 million extravaganza. It's a week-long wedding in this very ritzy hotel. And
she's a bit of a bridezilla, isn't she? She's really controlling everything. And wants everything to be perfect.
And so, and in kind of a fit of like, I don't care anymore, Phoebe tells the bride, she says, too bad, I'm not leaving. What are you talking about? I'm here to commit suicide. And Lila, the bride, is like, oh, hell no, you're not. Not at my wedding. And this weird, unlikely friendship rises up between them. But what I really get a kick out of between these two books, I'm going to comment on it a bit more because I'm going to speak to Curtis Sittenfeld, that in the American version of this story, there has to be extreme wealth. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like American storytellers, whether it's TV or novels, particularly, you know, when it's more commercial, but there has to be some level of extreme wealth that you could have this $1 million wedding, as opposed to You Are Here, where they're just like a bumbling teacher and a copy editor, like, you know, struggling along, living with moldy bathrooms. And yeah. So a lot of similarities, but very different cultural references.
Yeah, that is funny.
I would recommend both, actually, for people looking for some relatively light, trying to be a bit deeper reading.
I pulled out this review I found of The Wedding People on Goodreads because I thought it was very good. Megan reviewed it. She said, "This was odd to me. There were glimpses of some really great writing and characterization, specifically in the flashbacks of the main character Phoebe. Espach is at her best when examining her marriage, career, and her struggle with IVF. That all felt really authentic, engaging, and entertaining, even when it was about heavy stuff. I never felt like it was too serious. I was intrigued and wanted to know more about her life. However, the whole plot device of her just randomly infiltrating this group of wedding people to the point where they're having deep conversations about their life with Phoebe, this absolute stranger, felt so gimmicky and implausible to me that it seriously hindered any enjoyment of the book. Every day she spent with them felt more and more of a stretch. I mean, she eventually becomes the maid of honor. She goes on multiple excursions with people she just met and also almost killed herself at that wedding, and yet they're like welcoming her into the crew. I couldn't get the heartfelt lessons and growth vibe the book was intending because it was switching from serious subjects and character examination to this bizarre, almost slapsticky vibe that felt nothing like real life. No matter how outgoing a person you are, you will not convince me any strangers will act like this around each other. If the book was more clearly posed as satirical or not quite meant to be realistic and it stuck to that, maybe I'd like it more. But it had a toe in literary fiction and the rest of the body in some unbelievable funhouse world where you spill your soul to strangers in hot tubs. I ended up skimming the last third, the tone shift was too annoying for me and no one felt real. Thus I stopped caring about them. As I said, I did like the flashback, more realistic parts of her writing. I heard great things about her other books, so I would try her again. I just found the whole book to be like one of those rom-coms that is trying way too hard to be all at once meaningful, shocky, and funny, to the point of none of those aspects working. Pick a lane. And I thought, I actually agreed with almost all of that. I think the only difference between me and Megan is that I kind of didn't mind in the end. I actually was convinced enough by it and I liked it enough and what she was trying to do that ultimately I did think it was good and I did think it hung together. But it definitely could have gone either way. And I think very much it's one of those books where I think it does matter about your expectations, like what you're bringing to it. And I didn't really know anything about it when I picked it up other than it was being sort of tipped as a good read.
Oh, listeners, that was really embarrassing. I discovered that I had pressed pause record where you can hear yourself speaking, but you're not actually recording. So that explains why Hopefully, I sound that much more rounded out in the second half of this episode. I agree with all of that. I think Alison Espach is a better writer than this book's plot allows for. I also don't know that she cares. And it's interesting, right? There's somehow a bit of judgment that really good writers shouldn't be writing plot-driven page-turners. A bit of snobbery there. In some ways, I share it, for sure. Even as I'm happy to put away my critical judgment. Like, this hasn't been nominated for the Booker. So I'm happy to just take it for what it is. Enjoy it, but, you know.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I did enjoy it.
As a teaser, because we'll get there, I would put Curtis Sittenfeld into a similar category, and I have her short stories here. So I'm going to speak to that. But first, Kate, what have you been reading?
I wanted to tell you about a book that I actually have been really enjoying recommending to everyone I come across who's sort of like, oh, I'm wondering what to read. I'm like, oh, you should read this. So I went to Paris a couple of weekends ago. I haven't been to Paris for a long time. There was a time when I used to go frequently, but I really, really, really fell out of the habit. And actually, I hadn't been for probably like 4 or 5 years. It's just a really, really long time. So as a result, when I finally went back, I was incredibly charmed by everything.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, the culture, the food,
What a
the
city.
French people. It's so incredible. Like really, really, really did get swept along. And when I got back after this all too short weekend, which was very fun, we went to some fantastic bookshops, and actually just a little plug for the Patreon. If you sign up for the Patreon, you can hear my adventures in Paris with the people I was there with, as we did that as a little extra show. But anyway, when I got back, I was really like, oh, I just want to read more things that connect with Paris in some way. And my sister-in-law lent me this book, which she had on her shelf. She lives near the fantastic Amnesty bookshop here in Kentish Town, which is one of the best secondhand bookshops, to the point where I don't go there that often because I know when I do, I will always come back with a stack. Anyway, she lives so close that she's there all the time. And as a result, she has a house like groaning with bookshelves of enticing things that she hasn't got around to reading. So anyway, she's very happy to let me take this off her hands. It's called A Waiter in Paris, Adventures in the Dark Heart of the City. It's by Edward Chisholm. It's non-fiction. It's a memoir. And when we meet him, he has recently graduated university in London with a sort of arts degree. So there's no obvious career path that's lying ahead of him. And he hasn't really found his way into anything that feels like the start of a career either. And so he takes the opportunity to go to Paris to live with a girlfriend who's renting an apartment there. And they're there together for a few months. Then she gets a job back in London. So she has to leave Paris, but he doesn't want to leave. He really loves it there. So they kind of agree to part company. They go their separate ways, but he's going to stay in Paris. So he now has to pay for this place that they're living. So he has to get a job. It's suddenly become very urgent. And he then tries quite hard to get a job. Well, one of the things that he's significantly hampered by is the fact that he does not speak French. He's picking it up, but he hasn't studied French. He didn't do GCSE French at school. Like, he's really not got much of a base. And he's trying to get all these white-collar jobs, but there's just nothing. Like, no one is going to take him on. And after a stint of doing various bits of cash-in-hand one-off things, he finally gets a trial in a high-end restaurant on the left bank as a runner. So when we meet him, he's on this day, this first day, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what the job of runner is. And the tension is high because he has claimed two things. One, that he has previous experience as a waiter, which is not true. And the other is that he speaks French, which we also know is not true. And so from the very beginning, you're kind of like, oh my goodness, is he going to pull this off? And in the end, on the first day, they just have him in some room in the basement cleaning cutlery. So he actually gets through that pretty well. And then gradually, by hook or by crook, he manages to keep a toehold in this place. He manages to convince them that he's useful enough to have around, that they keep him on. And then you get into the meat and potatoes of the book, which is basically his adventures in this incredibly hierarchical microcosm society of the restaurant. The waiters who all hate him and basically want to do everything they can to destroy him because they see him as a threat. The management who hate him even more, the customers who aren't crazy about him either. It's hard to describe, like, why is it so compelling? One of the very engaging things about it is that he says at the beginning that he's taken as his inspiration George Orwell's book, Down and Out in Paris and London. Now, I haven't read that, but I sort of feel, because it's referred to so often in this book, I have a sense of what that was about. And as I understand it, Orwell's project was to really bring to people's attention what it's like trying to eke out a living in these places when you don't have any money. But obviously, being Orwell, doing it with a certain amount of literary flair. And I have to say, Edward Chisholm is, I think, an extremely worthy heir. He writes absolutely beautifully. The writing is just so good. It's one of those things where it's just so clean and great. You're not even thinking about it. You just enjoy it because you're just getting this story so brilliantly. And he's fantastic at observation. You really do get the sense of all of these people that he works with and what motivates them. And even when often they're quite mean to him, he always is trying to figure out why. Why is this person threatened by me? Or just always trying to sort of puzzle people out. And it's very, very enjoyable following along with him as he does that. He does a very engaging thing where, as I said, he doesn't speak much French. And he says at the beginning in a note that all the dialogue, unless otherwise specified, is in French. But then what he does when he renders it in the book is that he puts in dashes where there are words he doesn't understand. So there are whole paragraphs where you get little bits, but otherwise it's just these dashes. And then, of course, as the book goes on and he gradually starts to speak French much better, that gets less and less and less. But it's a very, very, very vivid and immediate way of making you feel like you're in that situation, which we've all probably been in, where we've been trying to communicate in a language which is not our own. And you get little bits and pieces, but also you're completely at sea. So that was brilliantly done. When I looked him up now, he apparently lives in Switzerland and he works as a screenwriter. And I thought, yeah, that makes perfect sense because it's very cinematic. It's brilliantly structured. It's an incredible page turner. It really has this brilliant propulsive quality. And at the end, it leaves you with a real insight into the social dynamics of this side of Paris that none of us going there as tourists for a lovely weekend are ever going to see. And it's really, really compelling. Just as a piece of social observation, I thought it was excellent. I really, really loved it. Looking it up to see what people say about it, it sort of seems like it's one of those books. Like if you know, if you know, you're like, oh yeah, that's great. That is a great read. So I've been very happily recommending that to everyone who crosses my path. And now, listeners, that's you.
I feel like that could be my husband's, maybe like the third or fourth book he's read in his life.
Oh, yes, of course, because he's a chef.
Yeah.
Of course. I didn't think to see if he'd read it, actually. Yeah, so he enjoyed it, did he?
No. I just mean it could be. It could be. We could
hasn't read it.
No. I'll definitely put it on his radar. Listeners, you may not know.
I think he would, yeah.
But
really
famously, Kate and I are both married to non-readers. Don't read books. Can read, don't read. And so, my husband has read, I think, Kitchen Confidential and one of the Gerald Durrell books on holiday when he was convalescing from chickenpox as an adult.
One of the pull quotes on the back is Fortune magazine called it Kitchen Confidential for Generation Z.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I feel like you're bringing better recommendations than me.
I mean, like I said, because, I was saying this to someone the other day, you read so many books. And also, people always think I read more than I do. You're probably the same because we talk a lot about books, don't we? But, actually, I'm probably reading 2 books a week, maybe something like that. Anyway, you read as many as you can. And the really good ones, like the ones where you're really like, this is so great. Like they don't come along that often. And as a result, you have this little kind of pantheon in your head of those books, the books that are like, that's a great book. And I very happily slotted this in to my that kind of shelf I have in my head. I also love it because I feel like it would suit a lot of people. Like if you were interested in food, you'd enjoy it. If you were interested in restaurants, you'd enjoy it. If you were interested in Paris, you'd enjoy it. If you were interested in sociology, you'd enjoy it. Like it's really just, it ticks a lot of boxes.
It sounds great.
All right. Do you want to take us back to Curtis Sittenfeld territory?
Sure.
Is this short stories?
They are short stories. So how much Curtis Sittenfeld have you read?
Well, as documented on the pod, I've read Rodham.
Famously. There's a dedicated
What else have
episode.
I read?
Did you read American
the recent
Wife?
one she did? No, I just remember you telling me about it.
Romantic comedy?
That was the one about... And then romantic comedy.
Oh, you hated Eligible. But
I hated Eligible. That was her retelling of Pride and Prejudice. That's right. But also, I almost always hate any kind of retellings of classic books. And then romantic comedy, which to my surprise, actually, I did really enjoy. Certainly the first half, which was like the behind the scenes of network comedy television, all
great.
of that was
really,
absolutely
really
brilliant.
Good. Yeah. I have read a lot of Curtis Sittenfeld. I think the first one I read by her was her first novel, Prep, which my friend Frances...
Oh, I love Prep. Yeah.
Okay.
My favourite of all her books actually is Prep. I loved Prep.
So that was her first, and my friend Frances from Book Club introduced me to that, in my early 20s. Then she wrote The Man of My Dreams. Haven't read that. Then my book club, again, very early days, read American Wife, which is a fictionalized account of Laura Bush, who is married to George W. The woman's name is not Laura Bush, but it is very much about Laura Bush, who was a librarian and was apparently quite a strange fit to be married to George W. in terms of their personalities. Sisterland, didn't read that. Then came Eligible, the retelling of Pride and Prejudice. Pretty bad, but I didn't mind it. I read her short stories, You Think It, I'll Say It, read Rodham, read romantic comedy twice, and then, and then picked up her short stories, Show, Don't Tell. So she, I think, is very similar to Alison Espach. She is a very good writer, and she chooses to write quite commercially inclined novels. I wouldn't say shamelessly so, but at the same time, even like the Pride and Prejudice retelling, even romantic comedy, right? Like she doesn't shy away from going big for commercial opportunities. Now, I think what I like about her is that there's something a bit uncomfortable in her writing. Like she really picks at what makes American culture what it is in a way that feels insightful, but a bit unsettling as well. I remember reading, maybe it was American Wife, but it kind of comes up often in her short stories, especially. You get this sense that she is not a Democrat. No, I don't say that to say she's a Republican, but I think she's very interested in examining across the line and poking at different mainstream cultural assumptions, but in a very commercial package. So I'm reading these short stories right now, really enjoying them. I'm not blitzing them, like I'm not reading the book front to back because I am needing a bit of time and space to digest them. Kind of similar to Alison Espach. She's really focused on exceptional people. Like there's a bias to very successful businesswomen or very rich people rather than just, focusing in on the mundane experiences of the middle class, which most of America is. But I find her really intriguing and she sits with me differently than other writers do. Here's a quote from Booklist that I think works for me. Sittenfeld's perfectly contained stories are a joy for their realistically and mundanely fractured characters, moral ambiguities, movingly related moments, and the message that even the smallest tale offers lessons to uncover. Now, Kate famously hates short stories, listeners, and won't read them.
Just thinking, this is not going to be the book to help me overcome my prejudice against short stories.
It's a shame. I think I never used to read short stories, but I really feel like I've gotten into them over the past, 5 years. I think you could do it, Kate. I think you should do it. I believe you have it in you.
And it's true that when I think about really great things that I've read, quite a few of those are short stories because they do have a way of packing a powerful punch in a way that a longer novel. There's something about the way that a short story has to be so tightly compressed. I see why it's quite a high art form. I was talking about short stories recently. I was very excited to be asked to go on Radio 5 Live the other week. This is national radio here in the UK. It was this book club that they were running while Parliament's in recess. They normally would be talking about politics and they decided that they were going to use this hour to talk about books instead. So this one was sci-fi. We were talking about sci-fi. And so it was me and it was an author, Adrian Tchaikovsky, who seemingly is very, very well-known, successful sci-fi. Do you know him?
I've never read him, but he crops up all the time, even in Elliott Bay and in Book Warehouse and The Little Slips.
Well, I've been reading his book about a race of hyper-intelligent giant spiders and enjoying it very much.
Is it very good? I mean, the thing
I've been enjoying it. It is good. Feels very much like Booker procrastination, but I'm happy. I'm happy to read it on that basis. And then there was a reviewer, Emily Wilson, also an author, but she reviews science fiction for The New Scientist. So they were the experts. They were the proper experts. And I was there. I felt very much representing, your every reader, right? Who
that's our thing.
Maybe isn't seeking out sci-fi, but at the same time, very happy to read it when it comes along. And thank goodness, because first of all, I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to talk about? And then I remembered Ted Chiang, Stories of Your Life, which is a fantastic collection of short stories. You wouldn't want that to be anything other than short stories because they're so brilliant and perfect. And then I had a very nice time remembering The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, which we did for the pod all that time ago. So that's a sort of gender swap, isn't it? The sort of interesting thing about that one. And then I talked about, because I felt, sadly, I felt it was very topical, Farenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Have you read it?
I don't think I have. When you're like, of course I've read that. I don't know that. They burn
Because I think a lot of people do it at school. It's one of those sorts of books. I didn't do it at school, but I did read it years ago. And then I reread it last week before I went to talk about it. And I was just struck all over again by what a powerful short read it is. You know, you really fly through it. And it's so evocative. We meet Guy Montag. He is a fireman. And in this dystopian future, the fireman's job is actually to go and burn books or burn houses that contain books because books have been forbidden. They are outlawed. And he is perfectly fine doing this, not unhappy with his lot. And then one day he's walking home smelling of kerosene and he meets a girl outside his house, one of his neighbours. And she is talking about looking at the moonlight or considering what the dew's going to be like on the grass in the morning. It seems like a slight cliche, but in this world, it's very odd and very unusual for anyone to be noticing those things and looking at these things. And they have a short conversation. And just that, seeing things from her point of view, really sparks off a whole new train of thought in Guy Montag's. It starts him asking questions. It starts him wondering whether the books that they're burning contain something valuable, that he's maybe missing out on something. And he's actually already been wondering this a bit, because then we learn that he has a book that he has concealed behind the ventilator grill in his house. And he's been sort of hiding that. So he's already slightly crossed the line. And then it's about how much further he goes, his own growing sense of rebellion, I suppose, and the inexorable power structure that he's enmeshed in. And of course, the central idea being that when you take away books and you stop people reading, the chilling thing about it is the way that the population are all anesthetized by media that pours into earbuds that they have in their ears and giant screens on the walls of their houses that just pour in this banal content all the time that keeps them all from questioning or any kind of independent thought, which is what the government wants. So this idea that when you take the books away, you basically take away people's ability to think and you take away the source of reliable information. And when you read it right now at this moment that we're at, where once again books are being banned, librarians are being fired for making books available, and AI is gradually dumbing down all our content and giving us these truncated, abbreviated, sanitized versions of everything, glib, easy answers to everything. And we're all happy because, oh, great, it's so much less work to to think, grab a bit of content that way. Well, yeah, happy's maybe not, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a seductive path,
No,
isn't it?
I was agreeing with you. We're all happy not to think. We're like, yes, I will take that information that you have given me.
Well, so 50 years ago, maybe longer than that, Ray Bradbury was thinking these exact things and imagining where that might lead a society. And so it's very chilling, but it's a really good read. And it's lovely. If you get the current HarperCollins edition, you get an introduction by Ray Bradbury to the 50th anniversary edition, and that was in 2003. That's right, because I was thinking, gosh, it's coming up to 75 years. And then you get an afterword where, having read the book, he's then giving you some final thoughts, looking back on this text that he wrote. And that's really interesting, the framing of that with his more up-to-date reflections on the way society's going. And also I loved the story about the way he wrote it, which is that he was in a library, in the typewriter room in the basement, which is the only place that he could find to type out his manuscript. And he would make these forays upstairs to look at the books and collect quotes and find materials. And there's a really beautiful passage about halfway through the book where Guy Montag, in a crazed frenzy, starts reading poetry to his wife and these two other ladies who've come over to watch media in their living room. And it's just so profound how strikingly beautiful the poem is in the context of the absence of anything like that. It really strikes home. It's such a powerful moment in the book. So I think it's a brilliant book club read. It's a good read. Like I say, anyone should read it. It's a great read. But also I think really good one for book clubs to do because there's so much to pull out and consider. It's a deserved classic.
And a deserved classic with a bit of urgency behind it.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, obviously, we didn't talk about any of that on Radio 5 Live because I feel like Adrian Charles was very much like, yeah, we're not going to go there. Anyway,
Oh, really?
It was very fun to do.
A host doing his thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just to go back to what I was saying about Curtis Sittenfeld, I was being a bit glib when I said, I don't feel like she's a Democrat. I think actually what I'm picking up on is that I think she's interested in breaking down this divide, this idea that it's a 50-50 split, and much more interested in showing characters who might be thought of as being from either side and presenting them in all their humanity, moral ambiguity, really probing different ideas in a way that can feel a little bit subversive to a liberal reader, but I think overall is good. A bit of a loofah scrub to think about things differently.
Coming up, What did the podcast book club make of Malving, an acerbic, unsentimental love letter to rural Irish life by Orla Mackey? While Laura's book club have been uncovering 15th century secrets with The Pretender by Jo Harkin. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about the podcast book club, which is available for subscribers to join via our Patreon community. In case you don't know of it, Patreon is a handy platform that allows people to support the creators of shows that they love. You can listen via the app or in your own usual podcast player via the RSS link. And don't worry, I give you full instructions for how to set this up. Subscribers become part of the book club review community with a range of benefits, including ad-free episodes of the main show. You'll also get the book club review weekend, the extra show I make just for subscribers. Listen in to hear about that book club away weekend in Paris and our favourite literary places we found there. Subscribers also have full access to our chat groups, where you'll be able to swap book recommendations with me and other book club review listeners. Right now, we're busy comparing notes on the Booker shortlist. And if you want to come and talk books with me in person, at the higher tier, you can join the monthly book club. We meet on the last Sunday of every month over Zoom, which I then make into a special catch-up episode for anyone who couldn't make the live discussion. This month, October 2025, we're getting into the spirit of Booker season with Audition, the intriguing short novel by Katie Kitamura. Judging by the chat, it might be a short book, but we're going to have a lot to say about this one. Head over to patreon.com/The Book Club Review for all the benefits and how to sign up. I would love to see you there. Right, let's get back to the book chat, shall we? Okay, I'll just tell you about the book we did most recently for the podcast book club over on Patreon. It was this book, Malving, by Orla Mackey. It's an Irish book.
The Irish are coming.
Yeah, they're on a charge,
Dominating.
aren't they? If you've been wondering about, the Irish kind of, it's not really a renaissance, is it? Because they've probably always been great.
Yeah.
But certainly it does seem there's particularly this moment, this Irish literature, it seems to have achieved such a critical mass of general brilliance. But yeah, I'd say if you're interested in exploring that, this is actually a very, very, very good point to dip in. It's her debut, and Malving, as you learn in the course of the book, is the local word for gossip. As one of the book clubbers, I thought very brilliantly described it, it is a series of polyphonic vignettes. So you're in this very small rural community in Ireland, and what you get are the different members of this community and their stories, and it jumps backwards and forwards in time. So it goes back to the 1970s, and then it will come forward to the next generation, so sort of 90s. And so you're getting almost like the origin stories of earlier on in these characters' lives and then bringing it more up to date with the next generation. And you're almost like seeing the after effects of things that happened in the previous generation. And the reason that's significant is because often these children were having a pretty terrible time. One family with a very abusive father, another family where they've got no money. It's very desperate. And it's divided into 5 sections. And the first section we were all incredibly struck by, because what's so clever about this book is that they're all highly unreliable as narrators. So you get incredibly invested in one person's story and one person's point of view. And then another character will come in and tell their story. And that makes you really reevaluate everything you thought you knew about the first character. And it does that all the way through. And so what that means is that gradually you become incredibly immersed in this community, because you're hearing all these different stories and you have to make your own judgments about who you believe, and you build up your own impressions of people, much as you would if you found yourself living in a small village and you suddenly had to learn about all your neighbors, and you just be on the alert for any bits of information you could get, and then gradually you try and figure people out. And that's sort of what this book does rather brilliantly on the page. So the writing is very good. It's a debut. It's a little bit uneven, we felt. I think not all of the sections are as good. There's 2 that really did resonate and hit home. And it feels like they don't all quite live up to that. Almost like maybe it began as a story and then she expanded it. And we felt the ending was a little bit tacked on, maybe in the same way. But all of this is nice for a book club, actually, because I think it's sometimes good to talk about things where you're really thinking about, well, how has the author chose to structure this? What was she trying to do? And considering, whether you think it worked quite not. But what I mainly thought was, it's quite a downbeat story in a way. There's lots of sort of hardship, and the whole thing is slightly framed by death, because there's this idea of the undertaker you never find out his story. You never get to hear from him, but he's sort of always there. just doing his things. And they're all very aware of this presence of the town of the Undertaker. So it's sort of overshadowed a bit by that. But as a result, it is slightly downbeat. But for all that, I really found it very enjoyable to read. And I think the reason for that is because the writing is so good and what she's trying to do is so clever. Comparisons were Olive Kitteridge. If you like that, I feel like Elizabeth Strout's version is a little bit more sustained. These are really, really very, very like micro portraits, each one only 2 or 3 pages long. But it's incredible how immersed and drawn in you get. And ultimately, I think she's such an interesting writer and definitely one to watch.
It sounds great. And related, and one of the reasons I joked that the Irish are coming, is my next book club read is a collection of short stories by the Irish writer Bourdain. And that is a brand new short story collection. I think the quote on the cover is destined to be considered among the best Irish books of the 21st century.
Is this the one that, so to coincide with your trip, I had pre-ordered this for you on Amazon. It came and it had all these rave reviews that in fact the entire print run that the publishers had done had completely sold out. You could not get this book for love or money. And I had a copy because I hadn't thought twice. When you said you wanted, could I get you the copy? I just pre-ordered it on Amazon. Great, I don't have to think about that. So I had this, at that time, quite precious copy of these short stories. I read a couple of them, but
oh, did you?
I didn't have time to read
We had to delay. We chose it as my book club book over the summer and people couldn't get copies. So we ended up reading The Pretender instead, which, gosh, I don't think I've talked about. It was great. The Pretender by Jo Harkin.
Oh, is it historical fiction?
It's historical fiction. Yep. It is set during the Tudors' ascent, so the end of the War of the Roses, which always confused me a little bit in history. I mean, I didn't study English history in that much depth over here in Canada.
Is it like the French Revolution? Does it go on longer than we think?
Oh gosh, I think the War of the Roses was like 120 years because it was basically these two families. I think the Yorks and the Tudors, right? They're just walking back and forth and like smiting each other. But this is set in 1483 when Henry VII, the first Tudor king, I should say, so it wasn't the Tudors and the Yorks. Gosh, how embarrassing. So Henry VII is trying to cement his power. Listeners, I'm going to be a bit vague here on the historical details because Kate has prompted me without advanced prep.
And Phil's not here. We can get away with this kind of thing.
He'll scold us. But essentially, when Henry VII was really trying to cement his power as the first Tudor king, one of the other families who'd previously been in power, I'm not sure if it was the House of York or the House of Lancaster, plucked out of obscurity, allegedly, this young boy who they said was not the son of the farmer he'd been living with for 11 years, but was actually Edward, Earl of Warwick. The son, I'm reading now, this is helpful, the son of the long deceased Duke of Clarence. So what Jo Harkin has done as an author is she's taken this small little footnote in history where there was this story that actually the Earl had hidden his son away. And then he died and the son had been forgotten. And he'd hidden his son away so that his son wouldn't be killed. And this was at the time when the two princes in the tower were killed. So, potential heirs were being dealt with. So this is the story of this young boy from his perspective. And ultimately, he does not know who he is. He doesn't know if he's royalty. But he's plucked out of obscurity. He's sent over to Burgundy. He then goes to Ireland and spends time with the Kildars. And that's my favorite sequence, comes over to England. And it goes on from there. It nods its hat to Hilary Mantel, but it's not as serious. It's a bit more rollicking, but really well done. I loved it. The rest of the book club weren't as enthusiastic. They said it was good, but they sometimes found it a bit slow. I was like, no, this is the best book ever. Which is essentially how it was pitched. I was like, Laura will love this book. Why don't we read this one while we wait for the Irish short stories to become available?
So they know you well.
Yeah, I know. And I appreciate them.
If you like Dorothy Dunnett, will you like this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like
But you don't like Dorothy Dunnett.
That's why I'm wondering if it would be for me.
But do you like Hilary Mantel?
Yes. Although I never read the third volume of
Admittedly, neither did I,
trilogy.
Because it came out when I had a newborn
so
baby.
we can't really call ourselves diehard fans.
I feel like I'll get there. But one, we know how it ends, and it's the downfall bit, right? Do we really want to see our beloved character beheaded? Not really.
know. It's like not watching the last episode of Rivals. I just want to, leave this incomplete. Yeah. Maybe I feel the same way about Thomas Cromwell.
Yeah. Well, thanks, listeners. Thanks, Kate. Good to catch up. And yeah, we're straight into Booker reading. Just quickly, Kate, what have you read thus far?
Of the Booker list?
Yeah.
I haven't read any of them.
Have you not?
No,
Wow.
I have at my elbow The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller, which I read the first chapter of the other day.
Okay.
No, I'm wildly procrastinating. I'm reading every single other thing I can get hold of. I'm reading a book called Sky Daddy by Kate Folk, which is about a woman who's in love with giant aircraft.
Okay, yeah. Well, you don't need to procrastinate with all of them. You should start with Audition by Katie Kitamura, because it's a really
Well, we're doing that
read.
actually for the Patreon book club this month, so that
you
will
can read that
galvanise
in
me.
48 hours.
I just thought this year I would do the ones I wanted to read least first, because normally I leave them till last. But
that doesn't seem
the
to be
trouble with
working
that is that I'm
You
not.
gotta get going.
I know. I haven't got time to waste.
So I've read Audition, and I've read The Rest of Our Lives by Benjamin Markovitz, which is great as well.
Oh, good.
And easy.
So I read something
So
by
get
him.
going.
I read the one of his set in Detroit, which I really enjoyed, and at the time felt was very underrated. So I like to think I spotted him years ago.
Sure.
All right, well, that is our autumnal book stack. We leave you now with hopefully happy reading and pumpkin spice lattes galore. Where are you on the pumpkin spice latte?
So gross.
I've never actually tried one.
I mean, I don't know if I've tried one. I don't want to try one. Nope.
Okay.
No.
So in terms of like life to-dos, gonna try. Gonna read 6 Booker books and try a pumpkin spice latte.
Okay. Good luck to you. Please report back on Instagram.
That's nearly it for this episode. Principal books mentioned were You Are Here by David Nicholls, The Wedding People by Alison Espach, Show Don't Tell by Curtis Sittenfeld, Farenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, Mouthing by Orla, Mackey, and The Pretender by Jo Harkin. Head over to thebookclubreview.co.uk for full show notes, a book list, and a transcript. Plus, you'll find our complete archive of back episodes to dive into. Don't forget, you can sign up for ad-free episodes, the Book Club Review Weekend, our chat groups, read-alongs, and podcast book club over on Patreon. You'll find the link in the show notes, or head to patreon.com/The Book Club Review. And a reminder about that special offer code for any Serious Readers HD Essential Reading Light. Head to seriousreaders.com/BCR and use the code BCR at checkout. You'll find the link in the show notes. To keep up with the pod between episodes, you'll find me on Instagram at Book Club Review Podcast, or drop me a line anytime at thebookclubreview@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, one completely free way to support me is to share it. Tell your friends, post about it online. It makes a huge difference in helping the show reach new listeners, and I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who helps in this way. As mentioned, we're now busy reading for our Booker Prize shortlist show. At time of recording this outro, I've read Flesh by David Saloy and Audition by Katie Kitamura, and I'm currently very much enjoying The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kieran Desai. We're recording our Booker episode on prize night this year, so you'll get our instant reactions to the winner. But before we get to that, I thought it would be fun to do an episode devoted to the long list, the books that didn't make the cut. Were they unfairly overlooked or rightly left behind? Joining me to evaluate them are regular voice on the show, Philip Chafee, and coming over from our Patreon community, Professor Elizabeth Eva Leach. And that episode is coming soon. But for now, thanks for listening, and until next time, I wish you happy reading.